Today we will reviewing a fifth episode of Alien Earth Season 1. And this episode is maybe even by far the best episode of whole series, because this episode is focused on what happened to the Maginot ship. In first episode we see that this ship has crashed. This ship has been owned by Yutani Corporation and has crash landed on Earth, where Prodigy, specifically in Americas, in North America, when Prodigy Corporation rules. And here in fifth episode we see what exactly happened. And this episode is by far the best of all episodes, because it is the most grounded episode of all. Most looking like first Alien, because Maginot is maybe sometimes even copying how Nostromo looked in first Alien, but I think this process of copying, of wanting to recreate the climate and the facilities and the, for example, dining hall or dining table is good idea. It's showing us how precise it was done, and that the corridors and the different facilities, laboratories, storages, fuel tank reserves, and all of that was really looking like a professional movie of our times. So the scenography of fifth episode is probably the best of all episodes of Alien Earth. And here we have confirmation that Boy Cavalier, the CEO of Prodigy Corporation, hired one of the crew members, specifically chief engineer, to sabotage the ship. We see that Boy Cavalier knew somehow that this ship is important, and it is important for him to gather those very rare specimens. But of course there are some issues with this episode, and the main issue is that the crew is very characteristic. Yes, the crew is very characteristic, but unfortunately for me, they all behaving like a children. So for example, they have a very hostile organisms in their laboratory, and not one but five of them. And they are, for example, making those little experiments. The chief scientist is eating a sandwich and lurking and examining some kind of worm animal. So we know that it wouldn't happen. In grounded adult world, it wouldn't happen that the chief scientist is without any protection costume, armor, or anything, and that they are only contaminated and contained in a very like light glass tubes. It would be too dangerous to gather them in that way. And even if, for example, it was impossible to bring more advanced equipment, they wouldn't study them on the ship. They would just go to the Yutani facilities with all needed machines and gears, and protective gear and protective walls, barricades, shields, and so on. So we see that even though Maginot crew should be a copy of Nostromo crew, Nostromo crew is far better because they behave like adults, even though they are not scientists. They are mostly engineers, navigators, and so on. So they are not engineers. They are called they are called mechanics in space, and this is the good idea. They are not very well equipped, but still they behave really rationally. And here we see that they behave completely irrationally, that they have a specimens, and two of those specimens are able to be free, and to kill most of them, because we see that this saboteur, chief engineer, sabotaged the ship and released the alien, so the most hostile and the most carnivorous of all these specimens. But others also were influential in killing the Nostromo crew. And for me, it was a little bit weird that all of those Nostromo crew are in a way stereotypical diverse culture people. So we have a specific Asian behaving like Asian, very focused and demure. We have even a chief navigator, or chief medical officer, which is played by an Hindu girl, by an not Native American, but by a Hindu women, very beautiful. As in Indian, Hindus women are rather pretty. We have a chief scientist, which is a black woman. We have a chief medical officer, which is a Jew, maybe not stereotypical, but he's a Jew. And we also have chief mechanics, which are speaking like they were native to Ireland, and also very heavy Irish stereotypical accent. But this for me was okay, because it wasn't pushed into us. It wasn't pushed into us that, see, we are a diverse crew and so on. And I imagine that in this world of corporations, nations are not as important as corporations. So all nations need to adhere to the rule of the corporations, because corporations are ruling the earth, not specific governments or specific countries. But even though it was a little bit silly that everyone was from a stereotypical specific culture, and maybe someone with I don't know, a quotation white background would be angry that there was no, maybe except captain and one of the officers, but they were all killed by facehugger, so they were not important in this episode specifically. And we also have the most interesting character of this series, Morrow, which is a main security officer. He's played by a black actor, but actually this actor is also copied to the Parker actor in Nostromo, but I would say that he's the strongest in reliability. That an officer would act, security officer, security even chief officer would act specifically like that. But other than that, let me say this. The after that episode, every of the episodes of Alien Earth will be worse and worse, and the is the worst. Even Angry Joe, who was a great supporter and he was very supportive of first, let's say, 3-4 episodes. After even though fifth, he was a little bit undecided on fourth episode, but fifth was also very good and very well. It gave this episode very good score. But after the fifth, sixth, seven, and eight, they were unfortunately probably the worst of all series, and this is the ending. So the ending is rather important, and eight episodes was probably, or maybe not even probably, was the worst of all episodes of Alien Earth, unfortunately, because from 8 episodes we see that there will be maybe even 2 more series to this franchise, to this TV series. But here we have a confirmation that Boy Cavalier was inflicting those damage on the Maginot, because we weren't sure if Maginot was crash landed on Prodigy lands because of the mechanical failure, because of the fault of the crew, or and we now see that Boy Cavalier wanted those specimens, but we are not because in the future we didn't hear about Prodigy Corporation, so maybe those specimens would cause, for example, other corporations to wage war on Prodigy and maybe wiped it out. We don't know this, but this is maybe one of the theories. So this fifth episode is really, but fifth episode is also showing us that those 4 different specimens, because here we have from 5 we see here 3 main. So alien as a main threat, alien species as a main threat to the Nostromo crew. We see this eye, which can even let us say implant into living body and take control of this body. And we have all this worm-like creature. So 3 of them are important in this episode. But the main issue is that that alien is not as important as even and as cool looking as other specimens, because they also kill and murder people in very vicious, disgusting, sometimes terrifying way. And an alien looks like a little doll. For example, at the end, he's killing the chief, those Hindu woman, this Hindu woman, not Indian, because Indian will be like Native American, Indus woman, or Hindu, but Hindu is a religion, so Indus woman. And we see that we barely see what is going on and what will happen. And it was completely not terrifying. And in first and in second Alien, we saw that alien creatures, they were so terrifying looking that people they couldn't even scream, they couldn't even move. So they were so terrified by just looking at those alien species. And here he's behaving like a sometimes silly jumping dog, doll even. So he's completely stripped of fear which he caused in past movies. Completely. Even in Alien 3, in Alien Resurrection, aliens were terrifying. For example, in Alien Resurrection, when we have the scene that they are very good swimmers, something which was not known before, and they were swimming really like native to the oceans and water tanks and water pools. So it was really good looking, and one of the crew members was kidnapped, and they weren't able to rescue her from this kidnapping of one of the aliens. So it really, and they couldn't also because they were underwater. And here all those killings by alien, they look all silly, all goofy, or over the top. And unfortunately for us, in 6, 7, and 8 episode, for example, in 6 episode, we see new species, the fly. The fly, so this is like a gigantic fly, and we see that this specimen, this fly, looks really cool, looks really ugly, looks really disgusting and terrifying, and alien just looks silly. He looks like a big dog with face with famous face of H.R. Geiger. But if H.R. Geiger saw this specific alien, he would laugh at what they did to his legacy, because alien species was terrifying because of its look, like a locust a little bit, something like that, without eyes, and with second like jaws, and when he wanted to kill his victim. And for example, the most terrifying aspect, that most of the times aliens didn't want to kill their prey. They wanted to disarm it, disable it, and then put an embryo of facehugger into it. So they were really terrifying species, and here in this 5th episode, yeah, we see that Morrow would be killed by alien, but at the last minutes he was able to escape to this emergency room and so on. So really, even though this episode is the best, 5th episode is the best because it is showing us that Maginot looks almost like Nostromo. The crew is interesting because they, for example, they have this emergency and they don't know how to, for example, put out face huggers from the faces of the victims and so on. But main antagonist, alien, is completely devoid of fear element, but also of surprise element. In Nostromo, he was very cautious how to act, how to kill specific crew members. He was rather lurking in crates. He was lurking not even in specific facilities, but in tunnels, like in corridors, very tight corridors on the top of the ship, difficult to reach by humans, something like that. He was more of a lurking predator, not predator who is just killing without any thought. He was an instinctive killer. He was able to see when and how to attack. And here he is just over the top. He's killing whoever he wants, and it looks silly and goofy and completely not terrifying. So this episode, I would give this episode a 6 out of 10. Maybe even 6.5 out of 10. But after that episode, unfortunately, rest of them are significantly worse. And what else? And the main disadvantage is that if we focus on those different species other than alien, because we have a fifth of them, so 4 of them are different than alien species, they are much more interesting because they are unknown and they are more predatory, vicious like beings. So let me know in the comments what do you think about a specific fifth episode of Alien series.